Xiaomi have just given us the Xiaomi 15 and the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, and there's some nice upgrades in some aspects, and in others it's kind of the same. We will touch on both of these phones, but let's start with the big Xiaomi 15 Ultra. Let's start with the display, and it's mostly the same. So it's the same 6.73-inch 120Hz OLED as we saw last year. Now, the display actually looks fantastic, and it's bright enough to use outdoors, which is great. And the only change here really is that the display has been upgraded with the Xiaomi Shield Glass 2. Now, Xiaomi have said that this is 16 times better drop resistant compared to the 13 Ultra, so not last year's 14 Ultra. However, I don't think any of us should be testing this, so just still be a bit careful. Now, powering it is the Snapdragon 8 Elite, and this is built on a 3nm process with custom Orion CPU cores, and that performance is fantastic. But we did have some issues when we tried to benchmark this, because it just took us quite a while to actually get that app running, and when it did start running, it did get quite hot. Now, we didn't get any high temperatures outside of the benchmarking app, so when we were playing games and just doing everyday tasks with the phone, it was absolutely fine, but it did run quite hot during this benchmark, so maybe something just to note. Now, some other small changes here. So you get a bump in UFS storage, so you're now getting UFS 4.1, and for storage options, it's 512 gigs and 1 terabyte, which is nice to see. The Xiaomi 15 and the Xiaomi 15 Ultra both run for software HyperOS 2, and that's based off Android 15. And while it is not my favorite OS that you can get for Android, it is okay. It kind of does the job. Now, for OS upgrades, Xiaomi is promising 4 years of OS upgrades and 6 years of security updates for the flagship here. But sadly, it's just not on par with the 7 you get from Samsung or even Google. Okay, let's move on to cameras, because obviously this is the biggest selling point of the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, and it's probably one of the best cameras that you could ever get on a phone. Now, the main camera is a 50 megapixel 1-inch sensor, and it has been downgraded slightly in terms of the fact that it's now not a variable aperture, it's actually fixed at f1.6. The ultra-wide is a 50 megapixel sensor, and the telephoto camera remains at 50 megapixels as well, but now it does 3 times zoom instead of 3.2 times zoom. And for that periscope lens, it's a 200 megapixel sensor, which apparently can do up to 17.2 times lossless zoom. And if it can do that, then that is pretty impressive. Now, here are a couple of pictures from that Xiaomi 15 Ultra, and it seems that the Xiaomi 15 Ultra's cameras all nail dynamic range, noise and white balance, and the primary camera at 3 times in particular is really good in like challenging lighting conditions. And the camera's default color palette is actually quite reserved, but Xiaomi have given you a nice selection of pro mode and photography styles here. Even in low light, I don't feel like the 15 Ultra struggles much here at all. The dynamic range does take a small hit, but the colors are pretty real to life. And the only downside is that the ultra-wide camera is maybe the weakest when it comes to low-light photography. But when you start pushing a little bit further, it does start to show some limitations. And still, I think the cameras here do a really good job, even at long range. Now, beyond 10 times, of course, details do start to look a little bit messy. And Xiaomi does have an option for both AI and traditional upscaling here, but none of these actually do a fantastic job. I would say shots at around about 20 times look okay, but it's anything beyond that, that's when it does start to get a little bit messy. Now, let's talk battery, because if you're taking photos all day on this, which is probably one of the reasons you're getting the phone, you want it to last all day, and it does, and then some, because it packs a 5410 milliamp hour battery, which so far for us does get you to the end of the day, so it's something you don't really need to worry about. Battery life on the 15 Ultra is great. Okay, let's move on to that smaller Xiaomi 15. Now, this has a 6.3-inch 120Hz OLED screen, and again, the change here to the display is that Xiaomi have swapped out Gorilla Glass Victus on the front for its new Xiaomi Shield Glass. Of course, this is still powered by the Snapdragon 8 Elite, so the same as the Ultra. And what I like about this as well is that battery life has got a nice upgrade. So we now get 5240 milliamp hours, and that's now thanks to that silicon carbon battery. And again, this is something that is going to last you all day without any worries. Now, the cameras on the Xiaomi 15, of course, are not as good as the 15 Ultra, but it still does have a 15 megapixel setup, and it has a telephoto lens at 2.6 times zoom. But there really aren't that many upgrades to the cameras, so a lot of what was here last year on the Xiaomi 14 is still here on the Xiaomi 15. Now, I quite like the design of the Xiaomi 15 and it being a little bit smaller than the 15 Ultra, because the Ultra, of course, is not a one-handed phone. You will always need 2 hands for it. But with the Xiaomi 15, having something a little bit more compact, I think is really nice. Now, it wouldn't be a phone released in 2025 if it didn't have AI, and of course, AI runs through both the Xiaomi 15 and the 15 Ultra. Xiaomi are calling their AI Hyper AI, and you have things in here like AI Note Summarize, AI Speaker transcriptions in that Recorder app, and also in the Mi browser, there's an AI summary feature, but every time we tried this, it just failed, which was a little bit annoying. Of course, it has familiar things like Circle to Search and Gemini. They are already pre-installed. And of course, if you go into the gallery, you also have the obligatory object removal. But the results here were not as good as we wanted them to be. And it is passable, but it's not exactly the best that we've seen. Now, if you want to use the features like AI Note Summarize or AI Transcriber, then you do need to actually have a Xiaomi account and log in to use them. And you definitely can't use them offline, which is a little bit strange. I think having to log into an account to use AI features is not really the way forward, but you know, these are things that you're going to have to do if you want to use all of the AI on the Xiaomi 15 and 15 Ultra. No matter how good the phones are though, it always comes down to pricing. So the Xiaomi 15 is going to be €999 and the Xiaomi 15 Ultra is going to be €1,499. And I think that's kind of exactly what we expected. There's no big jump from last year, which is what we really like, but is that pricing enough to tempt you over to grab one of the Xiaomi 15s this year? Now, that is a little bit about the Xiaomi 15 and the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, and we kind of stand by it here. The Xiaomi 15 Ultra is probably one of the best cameras that you've ever been able to get in a phone. It's really seriously impressive, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Would you be picking up a Xiaomi 15 or Xiaomi 15 Ultra, and would that Ultra actually just start replacing your point and shoot camera? I think for a few people it might just do. Before you head off, why not subscribe to the Android Authority YouTube channel, and if you do that, then I will see you in the next video.